You got me now? Okay. Welcome to our 4-session study on the book of Revelation. We want to look at what does Revelation really, truly reveal of the 66 books in the Bible. Probably the one that is most misunderstood and most misused, I think, is the book of Revelation. Some people seek to avoid it, keep it at arm's length at all costs. Other people maybe embrace it a little too much, or at least in ways that was not intended to be embraced. So by time we get done in our 4 sessions, hopefully you've got some basic handles on what is John the seer trying to accomplish. What's the book of Revelation really, really about? What it is not about. We, of course, in 4 sessions can't read every single passage, but we'll look at the major themes and the major parts of the book of Revelation. Now, if you Google apocalypse, the word apocalypse, these are the images you get. Doom, gloom, destruction, just either all hell breaking loose or all heaven breaking loose, but in very bad ways. And that's how many people understand Revelation. Now, don't get me wrong, Revelation has some very graphic images, some that are they're tough in some ways. But at the same time, I think a good way to approach Revelation is vis-a-vis Charles Dickens's book, A Christmas Carol. Who doesn't like A Christmas Carol? I mean, think of that. You got Kermit the Frog, you got Mickey Mouse, you got Mr. Magoo, you've got Bill Murray, all in presentations of A Christmas Carol. Now you might think, Revelation, A Christmas Carol. They might seem very different, but think, what's the story of Christmas Carol really about? Otherworldly figures encounter an individual to help him understand the past, to help him see clearly the present, and to warn him to change his ways in light of the future. In essence, that's what Revelation is about. You have otherworldly messengers encountering John the seer, informing John of the past, showing John the present, but also giving warnings to John so that John would give warnings to people so they change their ways in the present because of the impending future. And so if we think of Revelation in those terms, it might be more accessible for us. It might be easier to get some handles on Revelation. Now, throughout the history of the church, Revelation has what I would call a checkered history. In the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries of the church, Revelation wasn't always accepted as authorized scripture. There are a lot of places in the early church where they put Revelation on the shelf. They weren't looking at it. It really wasn't fully accepted in the Western church and in the Eastern church until the early 400s. Of all the books in the New Testament, Revelation spent a few centuries on the fringe. When we advance up to the Reformation, Martin Luther had mixed views with regard to revelation. Two different times, Martin Luther wrote introductions to the books of the New Testament. The first time was in the year 1522. When it came to Revelation, Martin Luther literally wrote, "I don't find much revealing in the book of Revelation." He says, "I leave it to you. You can make sense out of it how you want. I can't make much sense out of it." So early on, Luther was saying, Revelation, yeah, it's in the New Testament. We're stuck with it, but I'm not reading it at night. 8 years later, he had some different views. And the reason he had different views, by 1530, when he wrote his introductions to the New Testament, Revelation became helpful to Luther. Why? Because from 1520, Luther started regarding the Pope as the Antichrist. And so suddenly Revelation got a little more full. He could use Revelation to vilify the Pope. And so he said, Revelation is full of warning and comfort. And Luther's own polemics aside, I think that's really, really accurate. Revelation is intended to be full of warning, but also full of comfort. And hopefully we'll be able to see that. Now, the other great reformer, the two great reformers in the 16th century was Luther and John Calvin. John Calvin is the patron reformer for Presbyterians, for the Reformed Church. John Calvin wrote a commentary on every book of the Bible except Revelation. John Calvin, everything is decent and orderly and right-angled. And because of that, he didn't touch the book of Revelation. Even today, Revelation has a bit of a checkered history. Now, the Revised Common Lectionary, we use the Revised Common Lectionary. That's the Bible readings for any given Sunday. And we're not ELCA isn't the only church that uses Revised Common Lectionary. Most mainline Protestant churches use Revised Common Lectionary. The Revised Common Lectionary is used worldwide. The Roman Catholics have their own little variations, Episcopalians their own variations, but by and large, we're all using the same lectionary. Now, non-denominational churches, by and large, don't use the Revised Common Lectionary, but Revised Common Lectionary, that means you can go to church in Mexico City, in Rome, or in Bethlehem, and chances are pretty good you're going to have the exact same Bible readings. Let me show you something about Revelation in the Revised Common Lectionary. I'll do it by way of comparison. 1 Thessalonians, this letter of Paul has 5 chapters. And yet in the Revised Common Lectionary, 7 different texts. So 7 different Sundays, you'll hear biblical passages read in worship from the Revised Common Lectionary. The book of 1 Peter, 5 chapters. Again, 7 times 1 Peter appears in the Revised Common Lectionary. The book of James, 5 chapters, but 6 texts in the Revised Common Lectionary. Likewise with 1 John, 5 chapters, 6 different texts. But look at the book of Revelation in the Revised Common Lectionary. In Revelation, there are 22 chapters, but it appears only 6 times. In other words, the Revised Common Lectionary keeps Revelation at arm's length. And it only puts the nice parts of Revelation in the Revised Common Lectionary. You don't get the rather challenging, even somewhat gruesome texts. So if we ask the question, what is Revelation? And this is really important. This is a significant starting point. What is Revelation? Revelation is a certain type of literature. Revelation is a form of what's called apocalyptic literature. The name apocalyptic stems from the Greek word. Holy smokes, if you were in worship this morning, you get to learn one Greek word. Now you get to learn another Greek word. It is your lucky day. The Greek word apocalypsis means literally revelation. Now, apocalyptic literature circulated in various Jewish writings and various Christian writings approximately between the years 170 BCE and 200 CE. So apocalyptic literature was around for almost 400 years. The very first example of apocalyptic literature, parts of the book of Daniel. The second half of Daniel is really the origin of apocalyptic literature. Now, really important that we understand how and why apocalyptic literature really started to come into being and in some circles thrive. Apocalyptic literature rose in a social setting when wisdom theology no longer jibed with the experience of God's people. 400, 300, 200 years before Jesus, wisdom literature was the most popular literature in Jewish circles. Wisdom literature such as Proverbs. Proverbs is the classic example of wisdom literature. Now, wisdom literature, the basic theology of wisdom was this: the world is structured by God's wisdom, and when God's people perceive and live according to God's wisdom, they will experience a good, successful life. So when you read Proverbs, it's just look at how God, through wisdom, structured the world. Live according to that. Be wise, and your life is going to work. Things will be fine if you live according to wisdom. Apocalyptic literature arose when the opposite was happening. And they really started happening because of this Epiphanes, around the year 170 BCE, so 170 years before Christ. Antiochus Epiphanes IV was a Syrian king. And by that time, Israel or Palestine was under his rule. And in the Middle East, in the Eastern Mediterranean, the two forces that were clashing were Syria, ruled by, at that time, Antiochus Epiphanes IV, and Egypt. Now, it's interesting, after Alexander the Great died, his kingdom, the Eastern Mediterranean at least, were taken over by two of his generals. And so their descendants were vying for power in the Eastern Mediterranean. Palestine was right in the middle. And what Antiochus Epiphanes wanted, because Palestine was on the southern end of his Greek kingdom, Egypt's just down a little farther, Antiochus Epiphanes IV wanted a Greek state as his southernmost state bordering Egypt. But he looked around and he said, I got a nation of Jews. I don't want Jews. I want Greeks. And Antiochus Epiphanes IV, for the first time in history, tried to eradicate Judaism. Antiochus Epiphanes IV said, it's illegal to circumcise your male children. Antiochus Epiphanes IV said, it's illegal to have copies of the Torah. Antiochus Epiphanes IV would attack Jewish armies on what day of the week? Sabbath, Saturday, because he knew they were resting. And the ultimate thing that Antiochus Epiphanes IV did to try and eradicate Judaism, in the temple in Jerusalem, he had a pig sacrificed, desecrated the temple. And his agents would go around to villages and towns, and they had to swear allegiance to Antiochus Epiphanes IV and forswear Jewish practices. See why wisdom literature isn't winning? God's people, if they stay loyal to the Torah, they stay loyal to God, if they keep the law, their very life is in danger. So wisdom literature, wisdom theology wasn't working. And that's where apocalyptic theology came about. So God's people were living in loyalty to God, but they were being punished. They were being oppressed because of that loyalty. Suddenly, evil seems to be in charge. So apocalyptic theology started to develop. And Revelation is the ultimate expression of that in Christian circles. So some of the core aspects of apocalyptic theology. There are dual realities in the cosmos. In apocalyptic theology, you've got outer reality and you've got real reality. Outer reality, it's the reality of the world, it's the reality of society that seems obvious to all. So in the case of Antiochus Epiphanes, he's in charge. He gets to call the shots. Fast forward to Revelation, the Roman Empire is in charge. And to most people, it's obvious. Yeah, the Romans are in charge. Outer reality. Things are what they seem. That's why they are that way. The dominant culture controls the ways and means of social order, of political power, of economic dominance. So outer reality, it just seems this is the way things are. This is the way the world's structured. This is the way the world works. But in real reality, it's a deeper reality that's not readily obvious to almost everyone. So communities that live according to an apocalyptic theology are fringe communities. In real reality, things are not what they seem. And so inside knowledge is needed. We need to have that inside knowledge, revealed to us. So in real reality, that offers guidance, that offers reassurance. It offers resistance. It offers comfort, protest, and hope to live over and against the dominant culture. Outer reality, evil seems to be in charge. Real reality, God is in charge. So in apocalyptic theology, God's realm, heaven, God's got a hidden plan. And you've got these dual realities. You've got the old evil age, and that's where God's people are living right now. The old evil age is temporary. It's not eternal, but evil is in charge. There is suffering and injustice for God's people. So wisdom theology said, live according to wisdom and your life is going to work. In apocalyptic theology, live loyal to God and you're going to suffer. There's injustice. The faithful are attacked. Why? Evil's in charge in the old evil age. The need is for faithfulness. We need to be faithful to God. It's going to cost us, but we need to be faithful. So in apocalyptic theology, we are now in the old evil age. But there's the new age to come. That's when God's reign will be in charge and be visible to everybody. That's when reality will be set right. It'll be the vindication of the faithful. The faithful will be rewarded in the new age to come. Evil will be obliterated. It's eternal. It's not yet visible to us. It's eternal up in God's realm, but it's not visible in the old evil age. The message is we will be in the new evil age. So hang in there, resist, persevere. There will come that day when God will obliterate the old evil age and the new age will be all that there is. And Revelation lives from that. But because it's not yet visible to us in the old evil age, you know what we need? We need someone to be taken up to God's realm to see what God's hidden plan is, and then to reveal that to us, to reveal it to we who live in the old evil age, because it isn't visible. That's a basic scheme throughout all apocalyptic literature. The Dead Sea Scrolls, Jewish writings immersed in apocalyptic theology, especially the second half of the book of Daniel, immersed in apocalyptic theology. The book of Revelation, this is the basic scheme of Revelation. So John is the seer who has had the vision of the heavenly realm. He's been given the vision of the new age to come. And so his message is, yes, evil is in charge for now, but not forever. Resist. Have hope. Hang in there. Because the empire is evil. So Revelation is most likely, most Revelation scholars consider that Revelation was written during the reign of the Roman Emperor Domitian. Domitian was never supposed to be the emperor. Domitian's father was a guy named Vespasian. Vespasian, 60s, the first century 60s, not the 60s some of us lived through. It was chaos in the Roman Empire. Nero went wackadoodle. Nero started out not bad, but then he got these delusions that he was a Roman god and he wanted allegiance. And probably it was Nero or his agents who set fire to Rome in the middle of the 60s and burned 60% of the city. And so Nero needed a scapegoat. So who did Nero blame? That crazy sect over there. They worship this crucified Jew and say that he's the Son of God. So it was under Nero that you had the first systematic Roman persecution of Christians. Probably during that time, that's when Peter and Paul were executed in the mid-60s. Nero committed suicide because he was going to be overthrown. In 18 months, Rome had 3 emperors. It was just chaos. Meanwhile, beginning in the year 66, over there in Palestine, the Jewish revolt broke out. This little tiny area of Palestine, this tiny population of Jews revolted against the Romans. Terrible idea. The Roman general that was put in charge of crushing the revolt was a general named Vespasian. Very, very good general. Very intelligent guy. So in the midst of putting down the revolt, his troops captured one of the zealots that were revolting, a Jewish general by the name of Josephus. Josephus was taken before Vespasian. He's going to be crucified. He gets before Vespasian and he says, I'm a Jewish prophet. I can foresee the future. You know what I foresee, Vespasian? You're going to be the emperor. Vespasian says, let's not crucify him. Let's keep him around. And lo, it turns out through manipulation of Vespasian's agents back in Rome, Vespasian leaves Palestine, goes to Rome. He becomes emperor. He quells the chaos. Meanwhile, in Palestine, he leaves his son in charge, his son Titus, his heir. Titus puts down the Jewish revolt, returns in triumph to Rome. Vespasian is in charge. Titus is his right-hand man, his son. Rome starts taking off. Vespasian says, what we need? We need a stadium. You know what we should build in downtown Rome? The structure called the Colosseum. So there's a renaissance going on under Vespasian. When Vespasian dies, naturally, Titus takes over. But unexpectedly, in his 40s, Titus gets very sick and he dies. And his little brother, Domitian, who is never supposed to be the emperor, in the year 81, becomes the emperor. Later Roman historians, I mean, they didn't like Domitian. They liked Titus. They loved Vespasian. They loathed Domitian. And so Domitian, he got delusions of grandeur. And so later historians called him the new Nero. And so he's the emperor, and he is starting to see himself as a god. And so one of the polemics of the book of Revelation is against the empire, against the emperor. Now, also part of the historical setting. So, end of the first century. By the way, Domitian wasn't too popular among the elite of Rome, and he was assassinated, and his wife was in on the plot. Revelation is written to the 7 churches of Asia Minor. And we'll look at a few of those letters next week. Now, what we need to understand, this was not a backwater. This area, which is, modern day Western Turkey, at the end of the first century, was some of the most prosperous areas in the entire Roman Empire. Some of these cities, for example, here is the library in Ephesus. Ephesus was the 4th largest city in the Roman Empire. Rome was first, Alexandria in Egypt was second, Antioch in Syria was third, and then Ephesus. I mean, this was a major, major city. That's also a theater in Ephesus that could hold over 30,000 people. This is a theater in Pergamum, another very prosperous. This is a structure in Sardis, very prosperous. It was in this area that decades before, the worship of the emperor as a god got started. The worship as the emperor as a god did not get started in Rome. Caesar Augustus was smart enough not to proclaim himself as an emperor. When he died, he could be a god. Not during this life, because that would really tick off the Senate. It's only when you got wackadoodles like Nero and then Domitian that are starting to claim they're a god in this life that you got the problems. But worship of an emperor as God got started in this area. Why? They wanted to prove what good Roman citizens they were. How much more can you prove you're a Roman citizen than to worship the god or the emperor as a god? And so what you really have in Revelation, you've got, on the one hand, outer reality ruled by the Romans and the Roman ethos versus this tiny Christian sect who, according to Revelation, is worshiping the itty bitty lamb that's been slaughtered. And so what Revelation is really a vision of outer reality, a vision of real reality, moving toward the breaking in of the new age. And so Revelation starts off, revelation. That's the very first word in the book. The first word in the book is apocalypsis. Revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show to his slaves that which is necessary to happen in a short time. And he communicated by sending through his angel to his slave John, who testified the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ as much as he saw. Congratulated is the one who reads and the one who, that should be, hears the word of prophecy and who keeps the things who have been written in the prophecy, for the critical time is near. In other words, John's got a revelation. It's been given to him. He testifies to it. The one to be congratulated and blessed is the one who hears and who keeps, because the critical time, the new age, is coming. Now, if you made this mistake in the past, you didn't know, I forgive you. But from now on, please never make the following mistake. The book is not Revelations. It is revelation, singular. There's really only one revelation in Revelation, and it's Jesus Christ. In fact, the title of the book really should be Jesus Christ's Revelation. Okay, so don't make it plural anymore. And I give you permission to correct anybody who says the book of Revelations. You could say, well, that's interesting. Did you know that the very first word of the book is apocalypsis, and it's singular? So in Revelation, Jesus Christ is the source. Jesus Christ is the content. Jesus Christ is the focus. Jesus Christ is the goal of the revelation, the one revelation of the book of Revelation. Now, that one revelation is multifaceted, but ultimately the revelation is Jesus Christ. So you have a map that looks like this. God is the giver of the revelation. Jesus Christ is the content, the source, the focus, the goal of the revelation. Angel or angels are going to mediate the revelation so that John receives it, John records it, John testifies to it. And then John gives that revelation to the audience. When I say a specified audience, the members of the 7 churches in Asia. But revelation is also for anyone. It's unspecified audience as well. Let's see, it's 10:48, got started a little later. Doggone preacher, long-winded. God. You know, if you're going to 11 o'clock, make sure you go to the bathroom beforehand. So, any questions or comments at this point? Okay, so what we'll do next week, look at a few of the 7 letters, not all 7. We'll look at a few kind of examples. We'll follow John as he goes up to heaven and experiences life in the heavenly throne room. And then hopefully, yeah, I'm preaching next week. I'll make sure he stays shorter. Hopefully we'll get to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Okay. Thank you all very much.